This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Social Media Derby. Jonts, how's it going, mate? You alright?
Yeah, not too bad. Just want to get this season over and done with, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's kind of pittering out a little bit, isn't it? Title race over, top four race almost over. I'm obviously happy about that, but excitement-wise, I think we're all pointing towards the relegation battle being the only exciting thing on the final day, isn't it? I think it's looks like everything else is pretty much wrapped up. So, yeah, let's start with Arsenal, man. Sorry to say, it looks like it's pittering out in a bad way for you. 2 defeats on the bounce, 1-0 defeat away at Nottingham Forest. What do you think of the match?
Yeah, it was a bit boring. When it comes to a match, it was a boring match to watch. To be honest with you, I mean, obviously losing 1-0 to Forest is not what we should be doing as a title winning team or as a team that comes second, right? Like, I get the Forest ground is not easy to play, but we were shocking yesterday. And, when you look at the stats, it looks like we dominated quite a lot, right? When it comes to possession, we dominated. We had, I think, more shots on goal. We had more corners, more passes, everything. But we couldn't create any proper chances. We couldn't break them down. We couldn't, once we went behind, particularly, we couldn't get anywhere near getting a proper chance on goal. And just weird selection from the get-go. Playing Xhaka left back. I don't know where that comes from, right? Playing Xhaka left back when we've got Tierney sitting on the bench, who's clearly a significantly better left back. Particularly from the defensive point of view. And we're starting Xhaka there instead of starting him in a position where he's been really, really good for us the rest of the season or everything that's led up to this point. He's been a really good, solid kind of midfielder to have, and we put him left back. Just doesn't make any sense to me. It's just really weird selection. I get maybe he's trying to experiment or something, but at the end of the day, the Arsenal fans, I think we just want him to just close out the season with some confidence, right? I get it, we've lost the title now, but have some pride, man. We should. I know that Nottingham Forest are fighting for relegation and all that, and fighting to stay safe. But come on, you need to be putting them away. And everything in the lead up to that goal, it was a terrible goal to concede. The Odegaard pass, I don't know what he's trying to do there. I don't know who he's trying to pass it to. He's clearly having visions or whatever else that there's somebody else there, because that was shocking. Obviously no Martinelli. No Zinchenko, so obviously that limits us somewhat, but we were poor. It was honestly a shocking game to watch, and from the get-go, you could feel that we weren't going to create anything. I don't know what's happened recently, but it's shocking. We've lost 3 of the last 5 of our matches, which is as many as we did in the first 32 games of the season. That is absolutely shocking. And like I said at the beginning, I just want to wrap this season up now. This is a horrible way to finish it.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't the greatest match I've ever seen. We obviously watched it together, didn't we? And it wasn't. I don't know. It just seemed like one team was really up for it, and the other team just. I feel like you had loads of the ball, like you said. You didn't look like completely off it when it came to keeping the ball and moving it around and stuff, but it just didn't look like you had that cutting edge, which you have had, especially away. I mean, your away form's been really good. So it was just a really weird kind of, it was like you had your flip-flops on type of performance, but it's weird because I know the leagues hadn't technically gone, but it was, basically it was gone because we knew City just needed a win and it kind of felt like Arsenal felt that way. And yeah, the team selection was strange. Xhaka left back. I could understand it if you're missing Tierney or you're missing Zinchenko or both at the same time. I kind of get that, but without that kind of forcing your hand, it just seems like a weird choice. It either kind of indicates that Tierney's leaving or he's not quite up to it and Arteta doesn't trust him yet to play left back. But you kind of saw when things weren't going well from the second half, he brought Tierney on. So it seems like a weird experiment that he was trying to do, like you said, that went wrong. And he tried to correct it when it was a bit too late. Because I think if you didn't concede, then maybe it was something that you could have, snuck a 1-0 or even got a draw and kind of walked away thinking that, it was a bad day at the office.
On that note, I think when it came to starting Xhaka at left back, I again feel like Arteta doesn't know how to play any way but what he's instilled in the team so far. So the whole idea of having like an inverted kind of ball playing left back that can kind of come more into the middle and help out the midfield, it just feels like to me he's like, all right, that's the only way that we can play. And so I'm just going to put whoever's better at that position into the tactics and into the team, and we'll just see how it goes. And what he's not realizing is that we haven't got the depth to stick to one tactic the whole time. We have to play with the players that we've got today, and not all of the players that we've got today can do all of the roles that he needs them to be able to do. So he needs to be able to adapt. He needs to be able to, have a couple of different tactics, a couple of different formations in his back pocket for us to try and break a team down. But it doesn't seem like he's got any other ideas. Again, we've said it in the group chat for the last month and a half now, he's got no plan B. And it seems like to me, that's why he's putting Xhaka in there. And he's thinking, all right, we'll try and put him there and he'll do the job and you will be all right. It's the same as when he tried to play Vieira in that kind of 8 role next to Odegaard, and you're thinking this is not working. These are not the right two people to be playing in that system. And I think that's where he hasn't figured out properly. Okay, if I haven't got my best 11, here's how I need to change up a little bit. It doesn't feel like he's figured out a plan B to what we do. And it's clear when we don't have our best 11, that plan A that we have doesn't work. As soon as a couple of those pieces are wrong, everything goes tits up. So that's something that he either needs to improve so that our best 11 is no different from our second 11 so that they can just play the same style every single time. But even then, he's going to have the chance that he's going to get found out and people are going to learn how to play against it and they're going to figure out how to beat us, regardless of whether it's our best 11 or second 11. I'm not one for like Pep's tinkering. That annoys me when he's like changing up the squad every 2 weeks, changing up the formations and all that. I'm not saying that he needs to do anything like that, but he's got to have at least a plan B and maybe a plan C so that if we come up against different styles of football, if we come up against big teams or small teams or ball playing teams or whatever, he can adapt a little bit. Well, I'm not seeing any adapting at all. It's just like, no, this is how we play. This guy's injured. We'll just put whoever's the second best replacement, but actually is a very far away second from our first 11. I'm not sure if you're seeing that, but it's starting to become really apparent in these last few games.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to judge whether this is truly Arteta and his philosophy when it comes to maintaining one playing style through adversity, or for example, missing certain players or suspensions or injuries or whatever. He's still going to persevere with the same team or the same style of play, even when, for example, Rob Holding comes in for Saliba, who's stylistically really different. It's hard to judge whether that's truly his philosophy, I guess I'm trying to say, or he's kind of, his ass has fallen out when it's got to the pressure point and he's made some mistakes. I'm hoping, for your guys' sake, that it's the latter, but, you don't really know. I guess the sample size, when it comes to you guys in this kind of higher echelon of football, is too small. It's only one season where you guys have been at this level. It's hard to tell whether this is truly his philosophy, because I will argue when you were in previous seasons and you didn't quite have the right, you didn't quite have the right squad or players to play a certain way, he did adapt a bit more, and he did play a bit more defensive, and he did do the counter attack, and he did experiment with some different styles. If I even think about the FA Cup that you won in that first half season that he was there, you didn't play like you're playing now. You were a lot more pragmatic. You did kind of play a little bit more conservatively, and it paid off because you didn't have the players to play the way that he wants to play right now. So it's strange. I would hope, and I think at the moment, looking at the situation, it's more of the former, and he's more of the latter, sorry, and that he's kind of bottled it a little bit. I hate to use the word, obviously, because it's overused at the moment, but it's more of that than kind of it's his constant philosophy that he's always going to play this way and he's never going to break from it and he's going to be ultra stubborn. But I guess you'll have to wait and see next season. I think you're probably right. He's going to have to either be more flexible again and go back to play in a certain way that maybe he doesn't agree with philosophically to get wins, or if you're in a certain situation where you're missing players. But if not, he needs to go down the Man City route and just pack his squad with 22 players who all can fit in and are interchangeable and at the same quality level or similar quality level to make up for, injuries and suspensions, because you're always going to get that, aren't you? You're always going to have players missing. So you've either got to go one way or the other.
Right, like Pep's done that really well this year, right? I think the first thing that he's done is he's known really well what his players can and cannot do, right? You hear it when he comes into the interview sometimes on Sky, right? They ask him about like Kyle Walker or whatever, or can he do that role? And he says, no, he can't do that role. And it seems like he's got a really good grasp of what his players can and cannot do from both kind of a skill perspective, but also from a positional perspective. And as a result, he'll adapt that. He'll say, okay, here's what I've got. Here's who I'm playing against. Let's see how we can adapt to try and beat them, with what I've got. And obviously he's lucky in that, well, not lucky, maybe he did it on purpose, but he's fortunate in that he's got a lot of very versatile players in his squad that can kind of change about and play different roles. And he's got a bit more flexibility now in what types of formations he can play. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe, Arteta just doesn't know well enough yet what each of his players can really do. And he's maybe hasn't mastered the ability to be fluid and to figure out, okay, here's what I've got, here's who I'm playing against, what's the best route forward for the team to win. And that's something that Pep seems to have mastered. Obviously, he's got some years on him and a lot of experience on him, but we've got to be able to catch that up quicker. And we've seen other managers kind of struggle in this area too, right? Like the man management, the game management side of things. They haven't figured it out yet. But that's what we're going to have to be able to do to get anywhere near City, right? Unstoppable is a word I've heard very frequently. It's coming out of bloody Jack Grealish's mouth in every interview I hear from him. But they really are an unstoppable train, and we're not going to be able to beat them unless you say, like you say, we have 22 players that are just world class that can play any position, or we have to really know our squad better and know which systems work to beat the teams that we've got to play against. And I think that's where we've been found out, right? When we get our style, when we got our players, the ones he knows well, and we can just take over a game and control tempo, we win. And fortunately, that was for a long portion of the season. But now it looks like, oh, wait a minute. As soon as we haven't got a couple of our best players, or as soon as we get a little bit of pressure, or as soon as we, a team maybe switches up their style a little bit, we've got nothing. There's nothing, right? And that's worrying for me, because Premier League's a great league. There's a lot of great managers in this league. There's a lot of resources in this league for players to, for coaches to figure out and to spend resources and to figure out how to beat us. And we can't imagine that, everyone's just going to slow down while we try and catch back up or while we try and get ahead. Nah. In the summer, everyone's going to be buying who they need to buy. They're going to be doing all the training sessions, figuring out how to play, figuring out how to beat us again. We've got to make some big leaps and bounds from here to get anywhere near City. But not only that, just to stay where we are now in second position, or to be the second best team in the league, we're going to have a lot of work to do, because Liverpool ain't going to be sleeping. They ain't going to be messing about next season. You lot are not going to be messing about next season. Newcastle don't seem like they're going to be messing about. So we've got to do something serious here. And I'm hoping, I hope, with all these funny memes coming out about Arteta and all of his drawing hearts and buying dogs called Win and that, I hope he's taking a good solid look inside and thinking, what am I doing well here? What am I not doing well? Because there's room for improvement there.
No, 100%. Yeah, it's been a really disappointing end for you guys. I've got to be honest. From a rival fan perspective, it's obviously been slightly humorous and funny to watch everything like absolutely fall like House of Cards. But we talked about it separately offline about certain online fans maybe getting ahead of themselves, and then something like this happens, and then everyone goes into hibernation. I feel bad for like you and like regular Arsenal fans, not social media Arsenal fans who maybe exaggerate each situation. When it gets really good and you're playing really well, every player is the best player in a position. When it's really bad, you guys sack Arteta and all that, Arteta out and all that rubbish, which I understand in the heat of the moment it's really disappointing, but on the face of it, it's been a good season. Shouting about it being a great season, manager of the season, all that kind of stuff, I reckon that's probably one step beyond the reality of the situation. Because, like you said, Arteta's definitely made quite a few mistakes in this period of the season. He's made some mistakes earlier in the season. We talked about Everton away.
Yeah.
We talked about United away. There were some tactical problems there, which caused those results. I think of, was it Southampton away? Was a draw again. Similarly, there were some tactical errors and I think some mistakes that he's made. So I think you're heading in the right direction 100%, but you're going to have to make some ruthless decisions, I think, going forward, which I think we talked about last week with United and my take on De Gea. I think you're going to have to make some ruthless decisions, which brings us to our first talking point and hot take of the week, which is there's been a lot of rumours around Granit Xhaka and the fact he might be leaving the club at the end of this season. So here's the question, Jonts. Granit Xhaka, would you keep or sell him? What's your take?
I think on face value, you look at him as a player, you look at how he's played this season, you say keep him because he's been good. I think he could certainly work in our team somehow. I'm not saying like he needs to be a regular starter or important part of our squad, but he could work, right? He can work in there somewhere. But I think to say that is to ignore the circumstances, right? And the circumstances are, or at least the rumours are, he wants regular football, right? He wants regular first team football. He wants to be playing. He wants to be important. We've seen from him, passion merchant type vibes where he wants to be out on the pitch. He wants to be driving the crowd. He wants to be, dictating the game. He wants to be there and he's got that desire, which I think is great. But if he needs regular football, if he needs to be an important part of our squad, we can't keep him. If he wants that, that's not what we can give him. At the end of the day, he's been at the club 7 years. He's, again, been a very good servant this year, but we need a better starting 11. I've seen this debate happen like, oh, is it just our starting 11? Is it our depth? What's our problem? The answer is both of those things. We have a good starting 11. Many parts of our starting 11 are really good. But there are still parts where you compare Arsenal's 11 versus City's 11 or Arsenal's 11 versus Liverpool's 11, whoever else. You say, okay, there's some places in there that we need to improve. And unfortunately, he's one of them positions, right? We need a better starting 11 and we need better depth, right? So if he wants to play regular football, we can't guarantee that because we need a better player starting in that position, right? He's got great character as well. And this is another reason why I can't have him as a starting 11. He's too emotional, right? It's great to see emotion in the game and he's a great character and everything, but he makes emotional mistakes, right? And we need a more level-headed player in the core of that team, especially around all those young players that are, impressionable, haven't been there before. We need someone that's got a more level head in that position to drive our team to be composed, especially in these really squeaky bum times at the end of the season where we need wins. We're trying to, fight off Man City that are in the rearview mirror. We can't have him riling Trent up, or we can't have him getting yellow cards and starting fights with this, that, and the other. We can't have that, right? So from that perspective, it's kind of like the conversation we had about De Gea. I think it's just, this feels like a natural point where we let him get, we let him move on and let him get the first team football he wants. And I mean, I think the last point I'll say on this is I even saw that Gabby Agbonlahor is saying that we should keep him. And in my mind, anything that he says, we do the opposite of. So from my point of view, I think it's a great time. Let him go. 13 million seems like it's a bit of a bump on our part. Like, we should be getting more than that for him. I know he hasn't got a lot of time left on his contract, and I know he hasn't built up a hype train to deserve a huge fee, but 13 million, come on. I feel like we can do better than that. But I mean, what's your viewpoint? Do you think that we should keep him?
Yeah, so I agree with part of what you're saying, in that I think there's definitely value in keeping him. And the value is most likely to keep him as a rotational player, or like an AB option in that 8 position. Because I'm sorry, we can't ignore the fact that over the last 2 seasons, because last season he was good as well, maybe not quite to the levels as this season, but he's definitely been, he's been a real like reformed player under Arteta in the last couple of years. And I think that there should be some sort of reward in that. And I do agree with you in that you've got to be ruthless to go forward. And so I can see how you could think, okay, if we get another player A or player B, Declan Rice or Moises Caicedo or something like that, that would be an upgrade on him. But, that could be a bit of a prisoner of the moment situation, because Xhaka has been really good. And maybe there are other areas of the team where you could get, a more kind of clear upgrade in performance that would improve the general performance of the team. But, I can understand. I can't argue against that idea of being ruthless in the same way that I talked about getting rid of De Gea. Now, I know you don't think he's the greatest goalie in the world, and I agree. He's definitely made some clangers, but he's got 17 clean sheets. I know that's not purely down on the goalie we talked about. It's a defensive thing. You've got to spread the kind of credit across the whole defensive line, but that's some sort of achievement. And when you look at Granit Xhaka, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe his stats are not amazing, but his performances have been amazing at time and have been really good. Like, he's ranged from like almost a 6 on his worst day, which is not terrible, up to an 8 or 9. I can think of a couple of performances where he's been really, really good. And he's kind of driven Arsenal in tough moments. But I hear what you're saying. There are definitely better midfielders out there. So if you're going to be super ruthless, that 8 position, alongside some other positions where you might argue with me, could use upgrades. So when we're talking about that, is it who do you think would be that upgrade? Who would you look to try and replace him with?
So I mean, I would look to try and just straight swap him essentially with someone better in that position. So I'd look for Declan Rice. I think, like I've said before, playing him in a 6 role, playing him just like as a defensive midfielder or anything like that, or just like as a clean-up merchant, I feel like that's minimising what he can do. And I think with the ball at his feet, Declan Rice can be really, really good. I think he's also got a level head. He's got a similar kind of passion for the game. I don't think he makes quite as many emotional mistakes or gets quite as emotional as Xhaka. So I think it could be a straight swap. Let's get Declan Rice in. We, as I said before, we still got Jorginho. We still got a couple other players. And like I said to you before, you were asking me, is it just Declan Rice or Caicedo, or, do you want more? And I said to you from the get-go, I want both. I know we haven't got unlimited funds to spend, but get me Declan Rice as a replacement for Xhaka, and then get me Caicedo as a replacement, or not a replacement, but as a rotation for Partey. I think the two of those things will solve not just the Xhaka issue, but the general issue, which is we do have some weakness in that centre midfield. And it partly comes from Odegaard. I love him. He's been really, really good this season. But, when you have a player in your team like that loses the ball quite frequently because he's trying risky moves, he's trying killer balls, you need 2 level-headed, I guess I would say mentally mature midfielders next to him that can clean up, that can allow him to play the way that he needs to play to get us to win, right? Because he's our main creative outlet in the midfield. So from my point of view, let's get Declan Rice and let's get Caicedo. Let's not get ripped off and pay 120 million for Rice, though, and let's not play 100 million for Caicedo. I don't even think we could do the two of those things at the same time. I'm hearing 200 million max. So from that point of view, we need to try and do some wheeling dealing here. And if it comes to the worst case, just give me one of those two, and I think we can go out and get somebody else in the other position. So, was it Milinkovic Savic? He could be a decent option. He's not quite as hyped up, but I'm sure we'll get ripped because that just seems to be the case for Premier League teams now, particularly the ones in the top 6. But get me someone like that if we can't get Rice or if we can't get, Caicedo or whatever else. There are other options out there. They're obviously not proven in the Premier League, but there are other options out there that we can look into. So that's what I would do from my perspective. Obviously, I won't get into all the other positions that I think we need to fill, but that's the minimum midfield-wise what I'd expect.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I've heard other online Arsenal fans talk about that. Don't stop at getting Declan Rice if you're in for him. Try and get a Caicedo. Try and get another similar profile midfielder to come in, because essentially you need one more if Xhaka stays, and if Xhaka leaves, then you need two. Like, simple maths, isn't it? That's all that makes sense. But no, I get you. Personally, I would keep him and get one of Caicedo and Rice. But if he wants to leave, or if he wants to play regular football, like you've said, and you don't want that trouble, you don't want someone rocking the boat, or you don't want someone who's unhappy, then I get it. Get rid of him and be ruthless, like you said. There's benefits on both sides. I get it, but personally, I'd probably keep him. Let's move on to United then. Enough waffling about you bridesmaids. Let's get on to United. I've got to get the digs in now. Come on, mate. You guys have been winning all season. I've got to get the little.
Mate, it won't be long before Man City slap you in the FA Cup. So I'll get you back later. Don't worry.
I'm sure. The karma's around the corner for me. But let's get into the United result. So 3 o'clock kickoff away at Bournemouth. We need 2 more wins, or we needed 2 wins anyway left out of our 3 remaining fixtures. 1-0 win. Casemiro with kind of a close range overhead kick / bicycle kick type situation. Again, similar to the Arsenal-Nottingham Forest match, boring. Not really the greatest performance on either side. I wouldn't say Bournemouth looked like they were on the beach. They looked like they were trying, but they just didn't look like they had any cutting edge. And I felt like the best compliment I could pay to United was we kind of kept them at arm's length. I know De Gea had one save from Kiefer Moore in the second half, and there was one from Dom Solanke in the first half, but that was kind of a deflection and it wasn't a super clear-cut chance. But they didn't have too many chances other than that Kiefer Moore chance. We didn't have huge amounts of chances either, but we had the same old story. We've talked about it on previous podcast episodes and offline. Just lacking a cutting edge. Antony was one of the biggest culprits. I'm sure that's music to your ears. You hate him, but he got into really good positions like he generally always does. But the last final decision, he either makes the wrong decision to cut back, or he's too slow and indecisive to make that decision. And then, the
he's
defender,
got no right foot.
The returning
That's
defender.
the issue. He's got no right foot, man.
We were talking about it though, separately yesterday when we watched the match. Like, when he's doing it, when he's far from the goal and he's taking on a player, he will go right and he will use his right foot to keep the ball in play and dribble away from a player, which I like. That's right. That's good. Because at the beginning of the season, he was always cutting back. Remember, we were talking about it. What's he doing? He's just cutting back, doing little drag backs and his little fidget spinny roll circle thing and not actually taking on players. Now he's taking on players. That's good. He's beaten them actually. And he's got a bit of acceleration to get past him. He's not super rapid, but he can at least get away and he's got strength to fight people off. But now it's the same thing that we're seeing earlier in the season. When we get a counter-attacking opportunity, we need our inverted forwards and our strikers, when they run onto through balls or they run into final balls, to either make the right pass or to be able to shoot in a variety of different ways. And for him, he normally doesn't make the right pass if he needs to pass, or he underplays it, slightly, and he hasn't got that decision making right yet, or he's too predictable and he has to cut onto his left, which was the chance against Bournemouth. He was clean through, or the defender was kind of catching onto him, but he was essentially one-on-one with the goalie. He would have been, and all he needed to do was take a shot on his right foot. Like, that was the obvious way, and the angles were there for a right foot shot. And he decided to slow it down, cut back, go to his left foot. The defender caught up to him, another defender caught up. The other United attackers weren't caught up to the play, so it was taking an age to wait for Bruno, to wait for, I think Sancho was still on at the time, or Garnacho, to catch up and actually offer him some options to do something. So he was really disappointing.
I mean, you said
Bruno
also,
was
speaking
terrible.
of Bruno, I mean, what
He
was
was
it? We
terrible.
saw some comments that he was playing for Bournemouth yesterday, mate.
Yeah, Saeed, big up Saeed. He was cracking me up. I looked on Twitter and he was shocking. And I love Bruno. I'll be there, like with Antony, defending him even more so, because Bruno has actually turned up for us and has been our best player over the last 2 or 3 seasons, undoubtedly. But he just looked completely exhausted. Like his tank was on empty, and he was making bad decisions almost from kickoff. So he had a shocker. I'm just glad that, it didn't lead to a defeat or a draw or us dropping points. And, I'm okay if players have shockers when we still win, but it wasn't his best performance. And I'm hoping he's going to turn up on Thursday against Chelsea and put in a good performance, because we really need, like you mentioned earlier, we need our better players getting closer to their top form in time for the City match in a couple of weeks' time, because we're already hugely up against it. We need the Brunos, we need the Rashfords, we need our attackers to be up for it, because we're already missing Martinez. Obviously they've got Haaland, they've got De Bruyne, they've got amazing attacking output. We need to be at it. And our defenders look good. I think the positives were Lindelof. I know you were talking about the chance that Kiefer Moore had where he ran off the shoulder of him, but there's not much he can really do in that. But generally, other than that, he was really solid. And I have to say, since Martinez has been out, Lindelof is the one of the 2 centre-backs, whoever has played, whether it's Shaw or Varane now, who's been pretty much faultless. Shaw's given away penalties, done a few boneheaded things. Lindelof's the one who's actually looked quite assured and not very shaky, which I think we're not used to, because Lindelof with Maguire was very shaky. And that's what we kind of associate him with, kind of being nervous, shaky, able to get at. But he's been really good. So I think that was a huge positive.
Do you think that defense is going to be able to deal? Like, I get that Lindelof's looked better, but I mean, yesterday's game was against Bournemouth, mate. I mean, the attacking options there are few and far between. Do you think that defense is going to be able to handle Haaland running at them? Or, I don't know, maybe they'll even play Alvarez. I don't know what's going to go on with Pep's rotation. But do you think they're going to be able to deal with better quality strikers and better chances coming into the box?
Mate, I don't know if our first choice centre-back pairing can deal with Haaland and Alvarez and those guys. I think all of our top teams are going to struggle against him. I think it's inevitable. Whatever defence we put out, they're going to struggle, or Haaland's going to have some chances. He's going to give them a run around. We're relying on him having an off day, like the Old Trafford fixture earlier in the season. I think on that day we played Luke Shaw with Varane, and I think I don't know if he's going to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be able to deal with that. It's a good point you make out, right? Like, your first team, your second team, doesn't really matter. Anyone's first team or second team is not going to really be able to deal with that City attack in most cases. I guess the question is, are you saying that it's going to basically be a shootout then, and it's going to be just about whoever scores more goals?
I think that's highly possible. I think it's highly possible, but I think if it becomes a shootout, obviously that gives them a better chance, because I think they've got a better defence than us. So we're really not hoping for that. We're hoping for an off day for City. We're hoping for an on day for our strikers and defenders, and we're hoping that we're able to keep them quiet. It's a real big long shot. We've got to be honest, and it looks unfortunately like they're going to get the treble, and it looks like they're going to be able to kind of equal one of our greatest achievements, which brings us...
that brings us to an interesting point when you say the words equal your achievement, right? There's a lot of people pushing for they will outdo your achievement, right? And I guess there's been a lot of conversation about this recently, and there's been a lot of content coming out off the back of it, right? About, combined 11s, who's better, who would you take from each of the different squads, which I feel like is a really hard argument to do or to carry out. It's a very nuanced one of looking at, okay, 20 years ago versus today, how was football played, and at that time, who would have been better, or at this time, who would have been better. And I know that you maybe took offence to some of the conversations going on about the combined 11s. I think you've what were some of the takes from Carragher and Neville on Sky Sports?
Yeah, so that's the second take of today's pod. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you're right. It's hard to compare eras or teams from different eras, for example. But Gary Neville and Carragher did a segment on Monday Night Football, kind of preempting the fact that City might win the treble, and then comparing them with their current team with our '99 team. And I think, should we run through quickly what Carragher's his kind of combined 11 was? I'll quickly run through it now. It was Schmeichel in goal, Dennis Irwin left back, Ruben Diaz and Jaap Stam centre backs, Kyle Walker right back, David Beckham right wing, Roy Keane and Ilkay Gundogan centre midfield, Jack Grealish left wing, Kevin De Bruyne and Haaland playing as kind of a top two, or kind of like a I guess support striker and centre forward. So
I think that's been generous to your team, mate.
you're properly trying to wind me up, aren't you? So I mean, let's get the ones that I think I'll definitely agree with, right? I think definitely Schmeichel, I think he's probably the greatest Premier League goalie we've ever seen. But I think other goalies that could compete, aren't Ederson. Like, I think Ederson's a good goalie.
Yeah, you'd say maybe Van der Sar. Like, some of your other goalkeepers from other eras might be able to compete.
Exactly.
I don't think Ederson's getting on that level.
Yeah, I think Van der Sar's close in terms of accolades. Petr Cech, you could look at maybe Alisson now of this kind of era. I think he's probably the best of the bunch. But yeah, I think Schmeichel, that's a pretty straightforward one. I think City don't really have a proper left back. And I think Dennis Irwin's better than any left back City have had in this period, I think. So I think you're both footed, great set pieces, penalty taker, really solid, always 7 or 8 out of 10. I think that's a no-brainer. I think Jaap Stam definitely has to get in. I think he was my non-negotiable from the two teams in centre-back position. And then I think Ruben Diaz was definitely an upgrade on Ronnie Johnson. Right, Johnson was quite criminally underrated, but I think Ruben Diaz is one of the best centre-backs in the league. And his impact on City since he's come back has been massive. So I think that's fair. Controversially, maybe, some United fans might hate me, but I think Kyle Walker over Gary Neville makes sense. I think Kyle Walker may be the best right-back we've seen in the Premier League. Certainly he's got a higher output than Gary Neville, and he's been more critical to, I think, how City play than Gary Neville. His recovery pace, he's able to nullify and allow City to play the way that they do. So I think that's fair. I think Beckham right wing, that might be a bit of a controversial one because obviously City the problem is, isn't it? We've talked about it offline. City rotate a lot. So it's hard for me to even nail down who could be his direct competition, or it could be what? It could be Mahrez. It could be Bernardo Silva. I just think of that season and Beckham's overall output from right wing or right mid. He was really a big chance creator. So I think I wouldn't disagree with that. I wouldn't disagree with Roy Keane in there. Although I guess with Rodri, Rodri's amazing. If you're going to do that comparison, I think when you look at Rodri at the end, his career, he may have won more than Roy Keane, but I think Roy Keane's intangibles, his leadership, his the way he played, I think is also quite underrated. I think he was a very good player, so I would keep that. Now it's where it gets really sticky. So I really rate, we've talked about it, I really rate Gundogan. I think he's super underrated, and I think he comes up clutch consistently for Man City. And what was it? Was it Kyle Walker who said he's like the end of season Zidane? He just turns up and plays like Zidane at the end of a season. I really agree with that. I think he's He's top class, but I can't see a world where he is in that middle of the park over Scholes. That's an absolute. That's either Jamie Carragher trying to wind United fans up because he hates us and he's jealous of all our achievements when he was playing against us, or he's trying to take a dig because there's that whole Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes debate, and he's always trying to put Scholes down because as much as you can value Gundogan, I could even take it a bit more if you put De Bruyne against Scholes, and someone might say De Bruyne could get above him. I don't agree, but okay, I can understand it. De Bruyne has been one of the best midfielders we've seen, but I think that's absolute clangor to put.
It's a really difficult argument though, because I think, I mean, when you look first of all at the formations that they played and the tactics that they used, it's really difficult, like you said, to find one-to-one comparisons when you get outside of the defense, essentially, and I guess outside of just out-and-out nines now with Haaland. But I definitely feel like Gundogan and Bernardo Silva, we will look back on them and say that that partnership, that whole midfield, essentially everything from the midfield up was really, really special. So I can see why, just off of vibes, you're going to be like, yeah, Scholes is clear. I definitely feel like there is room, though. I can't imagine a world where you're saying that Beckham, Keane, Scholes, there's not even a chance that any one of those three would get replaced. And I mean, it's difficult to nail down who specifically, but I think Bernardo Silva and Gundogan have real good shouts of getting into that team. But I mean, I think the next one is probably the one I disagree with the most, on my end at least. And what did Carragher have going down the left again?
Yeah, I agree with you. Just to wrap that point up, I think it's fair. It's fair. I'm probably looking with my United goggles on and saying that those are just crazy shouts. But you're right. Gundogan and Bernardo have been class for City. But yeah, the left wing one is the real crazy shout because he's decided to put Jack Grealish in at left wing over Ryan Giggs. And I think the logic behind this, and I've heard him kind of argue this with Roy Keane before, was that Ryan Giggs had a poor season in '99 and didn't really do that much. But I'd have to say, looking at the stats, I can't say that I think Grealish has had statistically an amazing season. Right? If you look at his goals and assists, if we do that and use the same logic, I don't think he's been great, right? His goals and assists are very modest. He doesn't have double figures in either one. He's not really had an impact for the whole season on the team. He's kind of had an impact in the last 2 months, right? We talked about it on the previous podcast. I had a bit of a rant about him, didn't I? And I rate him, but you can't use that logic and say now, because in the last few months, he's been good, that you're going to put him above Giggs and then say Giggs has not been good because his stats weren't good. We know what happened in the latter part of the 99 season, right? You all know, Arsenal fan, what happened and what Giggs did in the latter part of that season. He was pivotal to us winning that treble. It wasn't only the Arsenal semi-final replay. He was really good for us in the Champions League. He was critical. I can remember games in that Champions League run where Ryan Giggs played really well. And he was really important to our team. So I'm sorry. That is the worst clangor of them all on that list. And I hope to God that you will agree with me because this is going to go real left and west for us if you don't.
Well, no. So, I mean, I get the points you're making. I certainly get the points you're making. I think that there is going to be a case, though, of when you look at a player like Giggs who had such a long career after that, though, where you're going to taint some of that season with what he did post that season, right? And I think with Grealish, obviously, I mean, he's already 27, isn't he? So he's not going to have a whole lot of time left to try and make some memories and get into everyone's good books there. But I definitely think that's affecting you a little bit. I think I agree with you on the statistical side of things. Although Grealish, I think, does have slightly better goal and assist stats in terms of output than Giggs had that season, it's still not enough to make it a clear cut like, yeah, Grealish is better than Giggs here. And I think it's more the optics, right, of Grealish over Giggs that sounds worse than anything, right? Because again, when you think of the Giggs name and what he did after that, you think no chance Grealish is getting anywhere near that. But I'll agree with you that of all of the shouts in that midfield, that is the weakest one, right? Gundogan over Scholes, Rodri over Keane, Mahrez or whoever else, Silva, whoever else you wanted to put over Beckham. Any of those I feel like has a stronger argument than Grealish over Giggs on the left hand side. So I'll agree with you for now. I'll let that one go. Are we saying, De Bruyne and Haaland up top is just a non-debate? Because I know you're a big lover of old Andy Cole, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I get it. Haaland and De Bruyne have had an amazing season. They've broken records. Haaland's broken records, especially. De Bruyne's got the longevity. I mean, yeah, I don't personally, or I find it really hard personally to agree with putting both of those in over Cole and York. But I kind of understand that it would be hard to keep, for example, Andy Cole in there with a Haaland. He's like, I guess Jamie Carragher's trying to make a 4-4-2 work in this day and age. And probably that too works better in this current climate than having two strikers, even though I know Dwight York kind of was more of a deep lying striker and Andy Cole was kind of more of the advanced striker. The system doesn't quite fit in this day and age. But I can definitely put arguments. Andy Cole's got is either in the top 10 most goals in the Premier League. He was a clinical bagsman and has been like criminally underrated, right? Compared to Darwin Núñez and them mans, which whatever Twitter prat, said that needs to get banned. Twitter needs to allow us to report him, and that guy can't be on Twitter spouting that kind of misinformation.
You're saying free speech, but not for people who say that, yeah?
not for bellends like that. That's like, that should be tagged where, they put that feature where you can highlight when something's misinformation and fake news. That one should have had the little fake news badge on it. So other people on Twitter won't get infected by that idiot's opinion, because I'm sorry. The fact that Andy Cole, who's the chillest, most like laid back don of all footballers I've ever watched on TV or seen kind of talk, even that caused him to come out on Twitter and start, talking with chest. So that's how outrageous it was. So, I could argue for Andy Cole and Dwight York, because I think they're, probably the top 5, striking duo partnerships the Premier League's ever seen. Maybe even top 3. But, I understand by the time Haaland's finished in the Prem, he may be close to Andy Cole's records in way less time. And the impact he's had on this Premier League has been unbelievable. And I think Kevin De Bruyne will go down as one of the best midfielders the Premier League's ever seen. I think he's getting to the point where he's in that Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes discussion for Premier League great midfielders. I think he's firmly in there now. And I can understand it. I'm not as outraged. Where, like you said, for example, the Keane Beckham one could have gone the other way. I can kind of see that argument, but I would pick my guys. Gundogan one, I think, is slightly weaker than those other ones. But the striker ones, I think, that's a 50-50 call, I think, right? People can choose either way.
On that note, it'd be an interesting, because I think it's a weird one to say, okay, here are the two teams we're looking at, and we're just going to choose 4-4-2 as our formation to look at that, right? Because again, 4-4-2 is going to lend itself more to the United side, because that's kind of what you played at that time, and that was more popular at that time. And obviously football's moved on a little bit now in terms of that formation. It'd be interesting to see, and maybe that's a topic we can get into if City actually do complete the treble, which is, let's try and do that same combined 11, but let's try and do it maybe with a 4-5-1, or a 4-2-3-1 or something similar. Because I think when you change up the formation, it's going to look a little bit City. It's going to look a bit Blue Moon up in that 11, I reckon.
No, I don't think it's as clear cut as that. But yeah, anyway, to wrap that little segment up, I think, yeah, Jack Grealish should not be anywhere near that combined 11. I don't care what he's been doing in the last 2 months. The impact he's had on that City team cannot be compared to what Ryan Giggs was doing in the 99 season. So if you want to clip that up, anyone, that's where you can clip it. Because Giggs literally is at least 10 times the player Grealish has been in terms of his achievements and his performance. So he should not be.
We're going to have to rename the pod, mate. We're going to have to rename the pod to I Hate Grealish, or
no, I really like
13 reasons why I hate Grealish or something like that.
No, I like Grealish. This is like on the Big Six, like, Tobes always, kind of being critical of Grealish, but not because he hates him, but because like Grealish can be better. Like, I agree. For 18 months, you're looking at Grealish, and I was arguing before that I'd love Grealish in the United team when he was at Villa, right? I could see him playing for us, but he was rubbish for 18 months. You can't just like sweep that under the rug and say he's been good for 2 or 3 months. He has been good for 2 or 3 months, but now getting, this is where the line has to be drawn in the sand, right? And all of this exaggerated coverage of English favourite nepotism-y type players like Grealish, who everyone loves and says, "Oh, he's a cheeky chappy, we love him," needs to stop. You can praise him and say he's done amazing at this back end of the season. You can say finally he's looking like a proper City player. You can say, finally some of his achievements this season are going to be valid because he's actually contributed to them. But we have to draw the line in this, like, oh my God, he's unbelievable. He's one of City's now key players. And, he's going to be in team of the season. Like, come on. City should have a fair representation in that 11. For sure. Their achievements are insane. Or they look like they're going to be insane, right? They haven't done it yet, but it looks like it's going to be insane. But he's not one of the players that are going to get in there. The players that you mentioned, the ones that have been important to City winning the league for the last, 4 out of 5 seasons, are people like Walker, are people like Diaz in the last couple of seasons, are people like Gundogan in the last 3 or 4 seasons, definitely De Bruyne. This season is essentially the Haaland season for City. Those guys could get in, but, and then you've got Mahrez, then you've got Bernardo Silva, who've turned up way more than Jack Grealish. I'm ready to hear those arguments, and I'm not going to bite heads off if you make those arguments like you did. But come on, Jack Grealish, there's no way he should be in the starting 11, combined 11. That's just, we need to call up Ofcom. We need to call up Ofcom and make some legit complaints, because Carragher's he's on that good stuff, whatever good stuff he might be on, whether it's flipping, drogas, or whether it's that hard alcohol. He's on something real strong, because that's so
guys, that wraps up the I Hate Jack Grealish podcast for this week. What are we going to do?
Tune in next week.
we're gonna get into his hairstyle next week and his calves.
No, anyway, let's wrap it up before I go on and find other stuff to shit on him for. Thanks a lot, Jonts, for jumping on. I know we've got limited time this week to get this podcast done, so I appreciate us jumping on. And obviously my ceiling's just fallen through, so we're doing it with a bit of adversity going on in the background. But yeah, thanks a lot, man. Let's hope Arsenal turn it around in this last week of the season. Let's hope United pull off and get the 1 point we need to guarantee Champions League football. And we'll see you guys next week. Hopefully with both of our teams getting some W's. United have got 2 matches in a week, so hopefully 6 points. And we can look forward to what will be a really frightening FA Cup final preview against Man City. And yeah, don't forget, if you're listening on audio platforms, make sure to follow. Make sure to leave a 5-star review if you're listening on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share, like the videos so we can try and get more engagement and more interaction. And we'll catch you next week. Take care, guys.
Cheers, Ant. Cheers, guys.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.